Hey guys, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video. In this one, I'm going to explain the tricky mechanic of percent damage is extra X damage, something along those lines, and conversions, and how the fuck it works in this game. So a few things you need to realize is that to avoid an infinite loop, the way the way the calculation is handled is it's basically following an order. So to avoid infinite loops of conversion, the game checks your physical damage, and if you have any conversion of that into lightning, it'll take that first. Then it will look at lightning and convert that to cold, and then it will take look at cold and convert that to fire, and then look at fire and convert that to chaos in that order. And obviously, if you have, for example, physical converted to chaos, it's going to bypass the three middle rows. If you have lightning converted to chaos, it's going to bypass the cold and fire, for example, and all of these things. You can convert a converted damage, so that means you can convert physical into lightning, and then you can convert that converted lightning damage into cold, for example. A great way to do this is the cold to fire support gem, for example. The cold to fire is a pretty commonly used one for quite a few builds. This one makes it so the supporter skill have 50% cold damage converted into fire, and then gives you extra percent cold damage as extra fire as well. And this is where I'm going to talk about this in the later stage of this little short video. But 50% of the cold damage is converted to fire. So if you then have cold damage and convert that to fire, but you originally only have physical damage, and you then, with different mechanics, convert all your physical damage into cold damage, you can then use a cold to fire to have 50% of that cold damage also become fire. So there's a few things that is really tricky when it comes to conversion. And the first thing is that if your damage, or minions for that matter, has a baseline of physical damage, in the equation of calculating damage in Path of Exile, they will always have physical damage, even if they're not necessarily dealing physical damage. A great example of this is in the current state of the game. The meta with minions is either to go Impale, which is kind of getting outdated because the cold conversion is one of the most pressing meta ways of scaling minion damage these days. And the way we do that is through using a pair of Triad foregrip gloves. Now, what the Triad grip does is that they convert 25% of the physical damage to fire with red sockets, to cold with green, and physical to lightning with blue, and white gives you physical to chaos. So we use 4 green as the most common way to play with the Triad grip these days. This means that the conversion of these minions will go from physical to 100% cold damage. Now, this is where we go in and talk about the physical as extra damage, and something that we're using for this quite often is the reference double dipping. We are using Hatred, and what Hatred does is that it will give your minions and yourself physical damage as extra cold damage. And as I explained, just because we're converting 100% of the fist damage into 100% cold damage, this doesn't mean that their physical damage is gone. So if you scale physical damage on yourself, or in this example, the minions, you actually will still scale that damage because the damage you get on the physical portion will then be added to the cold damage because you're converting it, which happens after the calculation, or in the middle of the calculation, basically. And what Hatred does is that since you still have existing fist damage that is just being converted, the modifier that gives you up to 25% fist damage as extra cold still applies. And then it also gives you 18% more cold damage, which means that the physical as extra cold gets further scaled by the more cold damage. And since we're converting everything to cold, that 18% more cold damage is also applied on the entirety of the pool of damage that they're doing. That's called double dipping because we're basically scaling 2 different sources with 1 modifier. Something else to be that's a bit tricky when it comes to conversions is priority orders and what cannot be exceeding. So, for example, there's 2 things we got to mention. One is what happens if you convert more than 100%, as well as what happens in the locked situations. A locked situation is, as explained in the PoE wiki. Are you new to PoE? If you guys keep up with it, I'm going to have to turn that shit off every time I make a video. Locked conversion. So if you have a locked conversion in a situation where you have a modifier that is taking priority over the order of conversions, you're going to be in a position where it's going to follow this list. I'm going to see if I can find it here in the wiki. Conversion from skill gems, both active and support skill gems, will take priority over conversion from other sources such as equipment and skill tree. and it is not scaled to above 100%. So before I'm going to talk about this little detail, I'm explain what happens if you convert 150% of your damage to a certain modifier. So if you scale 150% from, say, physical to lightning, to make that as a good example, if you scale 150% of phys to lightning, everything will be lightning damage. Nothing else is going to happen. But if you scale 100% physical to lightning and 50% of physical into cold, what it was going to happen in this case is that it will actually take that 150 and treat that as the new baseline of 100%, which means that 100% of the conversion is instead 2/3. So 2/3 of the damage becomes lightning and 1/3 becomes cold damage. So it basically layers itself. So you can actually bring up a higher than 100% conversion, and then it's going to be split among those things. And why this is important to note is because when we go back to the idea of locked conversions, such as conversions from skill gems, active and support skill gems, such as from Cold to Fire support gem, such as Wave of Conviction that has 25% from Fist to Fire and 25% from Fist to Lightning. For example, Fist to Lightning, which 50% of Fist converted to Lightning. For example, SRS, who has an inherited version of baseline on the skill gem, which is a 50% of Fist to Fire. And then you add that conversion on top of that. So I'm going to take an example of the SRS. SRS has 50% of physical converted to fire. This means that 50% of this goes into fire. Now, if you then add, for example, a 4-green tri-grip for the SRS, that means you're scaling 100% of the physical damage for the minions from phys to cold with 4 green sockets on a triad. However, SRS still has a locked conversion, which is on the skill gem, which is not able to layer. This means that no matter how much conversion you are doing, 50% will always be fire, because you can't layer a conversion that is locked on the skill gem, as the wiki is stating. So this means that with SRS,
just do it!
You're in a position where you're always going to do 50% fire with them, and if you convert 100% of their physical damage to cold on the SRS, only 100% of the remaining ones will actually turn into that scaling, which means that 50% will be cold. So that's basically how it is. And that's how conversion works, and how layered conversion works, and how these things stack. Same thing with the SRS, just a quick note on that. And that is that SRS is in a position where they deal 100% physical damage, even if there's conversions on it. So with 100% physical damage, you're able to use things like Hatred, which is giving you Fist as extra cold or extra cold damage. These applies no matter what you do. So you're still going to be able to scale SRS's damage from their entire damage pool. And that will be given, because that's physical damage, as extra cold damage. And then you're able to convert the damage as you see fit. So that's basically how this mechanic works. It's very tricky, but once you get the hang of the mathematics behind it, it's very straightforward and rather logical. The only thing that's somewhat illogical is the fact that some of them are locked conversions, such as the skill gems from both active and support skill gems. And they will always take priority and cannot be layered, or in this case, they're using the word scaled, above 100%, because they will always convert their set conversion, no matter what you do with the remaining conversion. Anyways, I hope this video was of help for some of you guys. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you. Bye.